when the water pressure in the sink suddenly dropped to a trickle. I went outside, flashlight in hand, and walked the property line toward the pump shed near the back pasture. The door was wide open. The lock had been cleanly cut. Inside, someone had yanked out the main feed pipe and smashed the valve head with a rock. Our entire well system was down. I called the emergency plumber, and he confirmed what I already suspected. This wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. While we waited for him to bring in replacement parts, Ricky and I took shifts monitoring the perimeter. Around 2:30 a.m., Duke let out a low growl, and the camera feed from the east side gate started flickering. I grabbed the remote monitor and zoomed in. A figure in dark clothes crouched near the fence line, bolt cutters in hand. I didn't recognize the guy at first, but Ricky did. It was Jenna's cousin Daryl, a known petty criminal with a rap sheet that included copper theft and breaking into vending machines. We watched as he snipped through the lower rung of the fence and ducked into the shadows. Ricky wanted to go out there with the shotgun, but I told him to wait. Let the cameras get the footage. Let them make the mistake on record. Daryl moved through the outer pasture, snooping near the tool shed and whispering on a burner phone. At one point, he tried the back barn door, but it was locked solid. When he finally gave up and left the way he came, Duke growled again but didn't bark. Smart dog. The next morning, I emailed the footage to both Sheriff Clay and Mitch, who responded with a single sentence: "This is going to bury her." But Jenna wasn't quite done digging her own grave. By Saturday, she had filed a police report claiming I had stolen her land back and harassed her. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. She walked into the sheriff's office with fake documents in one hand and crocodile tears in the other, trying to play the role of the innocent woman being bullied by her unstable ex. But Clay knew better. He'd known me since middle school. He told her, very calmly, that she was under investigation for felony fraud and that the next time she stepped foot near the ranch, she'd be in cuffs. That must have rattled her, because later that night, we caught her on camera sitting in a car down the road, watching the ranch through binoculars. She stayed for over an hour, lights off, engine idling, like she was casing the place for something bigger. And I was right. Around 1:47 a.m., the barn camera caught movement. Fast. Blurry. Two figures in hoodies ran up to the main door, fiddled with something metallic, and then sprinted off. Seconds later, a flicker of orange appeared under the barn wall. It wasn't a big flame, not at first. Just a spark. But then came the smoke. I was out of the house and running before the alarm had even finished buzzing. Ricky grabbed the fire extinguisher while I grabbed the shovel, and we doused the dry hay before it could ignite fully. The fire never got more than a few square feet, but it left behind a burn mark on the wall and a clear smell of gasoline. The arson investigator confirmed it by noon. Jenna had tried to burn the place down. Not sell it. Not scare us off. Burn it. Burn the place I was born on. Burn the barn where my father taught me to ride. Burn the hay that fed the herd through the worst drought in 20 years. And for what? A quick payday and a clean getaway. That was the moment the line snapped. This wasn't just fraud anymore. This wasn't just a bad relationship gone sour. It was a war. And I wasn't going to sit back and hope the law caught up. I was going to make it so public, so obvious, so humiliating, that Jenna would regret ever stepping foot on this land. I called Mitch. Told him to file the civil suit and start prepping the criminal charges. Then I called a local news station and invited them out to the ranch. I gave them the full tour. Showed them the burned barn wall, the pipe sabotage, the video footage, the court filings, the fake documents. Everything. They ate it up like barbecue at a state fair. By sundown, the story was live, running under the headline "Woman Tries to Auction Ranch She Doesn't Own, Gets Caught on Camera." And Jenna? She watched it all unfold from her car, parked once again on the hill behind the cedar grove. I saw her there, clutching her steering wheel like it was the last thing holding her together. But she still didn't drive away. Not yet. And that told me one thing. She still had a move left. And it was going to be loud. By Sunday morning, the video had been shared over 200,000 times, the comments section bursting with people from every part of the country weighing in on Jenna's nerve, her brazenness, and how sweet the justice would taste once the legal hammer finally dropped. I watched it all unfold from my front porch, phone buzzing every few seconds with another message, another article, another radio station wanting an interview. But I wasn't after internet fame. I was after a reckoning. And by the looks of things, it was finally crawling its way toward her. The local news piece had gone viral faster than we expected. Even regional affiliates picked it up, running the footage of me storming into the auction crowd, calling out the fraud mid-bid, and Jenna's frozen expression like a deer who finally noticed the headlights. The video of her cousin creeping onto my property with bolt cutters didn't help her case either. And then came the icing, camera footage of her silver SUV parked just off the fire site, time-stamped the same hour the gasoline burn mark was seared into the side of my barn. The sheriff's department had everything they needed, but while the criminal case crawled through the slow and steady pipeline of due process, I had a different idea in mind. One that would make her answer for what she'd done in real time. Monday morning, I walked into the county administrative building with a folder full of receipts and a flash drive of evidence. The auction house that Jenna used, Weston Properties and Estate Liquidation, had listed my property without so much as a whisper of verification. That made them liable. I scheduled a meeting with their executive manager and let Mitch do the talking. The man tried to defend their process until Mitch dropped a printed image on the desk. Jenna, mid-handshake with Dale Weston, her signature on a check in the corner of the frame, both of them standing in front of my gate. I watched the color drain from his face like water leaking out of a cracked pot. The man swallowed hard and said he'd be in touch, but I didn't wait. I told him, flatly, that if they didn't issue a public retraction, I'd sue them for damages and name every agent involved. I gave him 24 hours. Mitch said we were being generous. Back on the ranch, Ricky and I worked like we were prepping for a storm. We reinforced the barn locks, replaced the damaged pipes, and installed a second round of trail cams on the outer perimeter with night vision and motion sensors. Duke stayed close, eyes sharper than ever. Jenna, meanwhile, had gone quiet. No binoculars. No car. No new signs. It was almost eerie, like the eye of the hurricane had parked itself over us. But I knew silence was never safety with her. It was strategy. Then, 2 days later, she resurfaced in the most Jenna way imaginable. She filed a countersuit claiming I had emotionally manipulated her into thinking she owned half the land, citing verbal agreements, implied trust, and some nonsense about a promised marriage that never happened. The audacity of it didn't surprise me anymore. It just sharpened the knife I was already holding by the handle. So I took it public. I sent the countersuit to the same news station, and within hours, they had updated the story. Their lead anchor read the new headline with a mix of disbelief and amusement. Woman who tried to burn down ranch now says she owns it because of love. The public ate it up. The local Facebook groups exploded. Some people mocked her. Some pitied her. But everyone agreed she was finished. Meanwhile, I reached out to a few local ranchers and told them everything. They'd known my family for generations, and they had no love for Jenna or her little network of hangers-on. One of them, Old Man Creighton, came forward with a story I didn't expect. Turns out Jenna had tried something similar 3 years ago with a different man out in Redstone County. She'd moved in under the pretense of needing a job and a roof, charmed her way into his trust, then tried to claim his property taxes were overdue and she had paid them to protect the land. The man had managed to evict her, but he never reported it. Didn't want the drama. But he was willing to testify now. Said he still had voicemails from her threatening to go to the county clerk if he didn't sign over half the deed. I forwarded everything to Mitch. His reply was short. We're not just going to win. We're going to bury her. And then came the moment I'd been building toward. The town's annual livestock and property auction was scheduled for Saturday. Same fairgrounds. Same crowd. Same auctioneer. Except this time, I booked the stage. I didn't tell anyone what I had planned. Just submitted the request through the fair committee, who were more than happy to give me a 10-minute speaking slot given how much local support had rallied behind my case. The crowd gathered like it always did, dust hanging in the air like lazy ghosts, families lined up at food trucks, teenagers pretending not to care, ranchers scanning the horizon like they were looking for a reason to laugh again. And then I walked up on stage, microphone in hand, and told them everything. From the moment Jenna moved in, to the fake auction, to the fire. I showed the video clips, one by one. Each time a new image appeared on the screen behind me, there was a ripple of gasps and murmurs. The footage of her handing over fake papers. Her cousin creeping through my fields. Her sitting in the car with binoculars. The burn mark on the barn. And finally, her ridiculous claim that I owed her the land because of some imaginary promise of love. When I was done, the crowd was dead silent for about 3 seconds. Then came the applause. Not polite. Not mild. It was thunderous. People whistled. Cheered. Even some of the auction house employees clapped. I looked out over them and smiled. Not because I needed the praise, but because I knew she would hear about this moment. And it would gut her more than any lawsuit ever could. Later that afternoon, as the auction rolled on and the livestock pens buzzed with activity, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses tried to slip through the crowd unnoticed. But someone spotted her. Then another. And another. Soon, she was surrounded by whispering voices and camera phones. She turned to leave, but not before someone asked her, loud enough for everyone to hear. "So Jenna, you still think it was yours?" She didn't answer. Just walked faster. Almost ran. Disappearing into the parking lot like a shadow trying to escape the sun. And that was when I knew. She was done. There were still hearings ahead. Still papers to sign and courts to face. But the truth was no longer just something I carried. It was public now. And truth, when it spreads like wildfire through a town that values grit and honor more than gold, burns hotter than any lie ever could. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and stale coffee, and the flickering fluorescent lights overhead did little to ease the tension threading through the packed wooden benches. I sat at the plaintiff's table in a button-down shirt that felt too tight across the shoulders, my boots polished for the first time in years, and Mitch flipping through papers beside me like he was slicing through a roast. Across the room sat Jenna, in a gray blazer and fake pearls, her hair pinned back to look more respectable, though nothing could hide the storm of panic swirling behind her carefully practiced expression. Next to her sat her lawyer, a smug man named Russell Brandley, no relation to the celebrity, though he carried the same self-importance. He had the air of someone who thought rural folk were slow, as if we used pitchforks instead of printers and couldn't tell a legal loophole from a barn door. I knew from the start he'd be a problem. The case had moved quickly thanks to the overwhelming volume of evidence and the public pressure. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Honorable Denise Keener, had agreed to hear both the civil and preliminary criminal issues in one consolidated session to save time, and she didn't waste a second getting started. Opening statements flew like buckshot. Mitch was calm, sharp, laying out a concise timeline with photos, video clips, and documents to support every point. Russell, on the other hand, leaned on emotional appeal. He painted Jenna as a vulnerable woman manipulated by a long-term relationship, someone who had reason to believe she shared ownership in the ranch, and claimed I had gaslit her into confusion over what was hers and what was mine. The term gaslit echoed awkwardly through the courtroom, and I could see the judge's brow twitch in irritation. The real show started when Russell called Jenna to the stand. She walked slowly, hands folded like a Sunday school teacher, and began her carefully rehearsed tale. She spoke about moving in to help around the ranch, how she took care of the house, organized the finances, even filed tax forms on my behalf. She claimed I'd once told her, over coffee, that she'd earned a stake in the land. She said I encouraged her to make improvements, gave her free rein to make decisions, and that I'd promised her in front of God and a pan of cornbread that the ranch would be hers one day. She even dabbed her eyes with a tissue at one point, sighing about how she felt. Unwanted, discarded, like an old work glove tossed on the porch.